Well, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our second new knowledge of 2023. It's even hard to remember to put 2023 on my checks or anything that I signed, but I'm glad you could join us. This is a series that we have been hosting for going on 10 years to help our businesses, not only in Washington County, but it seems like it is growing to help not only the Tri-Cities area, but throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I'm with Virginia Community Capital. If you're not familiar with us, we are a community development financial institution in Virginia focused on three areas, and that is lending, investing, and community innovation, which is the team that I work in to helping small businesses and communities support their small businesses. We're happy to be a partner with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and the town of Abington. I mentioned to our guest before we got started last night, we kicked off our 10th annual Washington County Business Challenge that we've been doing. And for the next 6 weeks, we will be helping businesses do some training, but also compete for $36,000 in incentives, thanks to our county, town, and private partners. Today's session is being recorded for training and educational purposes. But before I get started and to keep the webinar flowing, we want to let you know that everyone is muted and your video is off. However, it's important since you're spending the time that you can ask questions. So if you have a question, please post those in the Q&A session and we will address those during and especially afterwards, because I know that you've got tons of questions. And I am delighted to have Taylor Winchester with Found.ee with us today. Taylor comes to us from Charlotte, North Carolina. He has a history of helping record labels, creators, artists, and even event promoters develop and execute digital marketing campaigns. He knows what is going on in the market, and it's important to him and his business to keep up with what's going on. So I'm looking forward to your presentation to help businesses as I help them going forward. So Taylor, thanks so much for taking the time and to share your expertise with everyone. So folks, here's Taylor Winchester.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. And to add to your point, yes, my current role is focused on working with, record labels and folks more specifically in the music industry. My background has been, while focused on music, is also really built around, hospitality, tourism, and kind of that event marketing to a degree as well. So prior to joining Found.ee, I consulted with regional organizations, park and rec organizations to help program and plan and market events. So these days I am focused more on digital marketing than I am live event and or promotion or producing events. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect to hear and see and hopefully work into your marketing strategy in 2023. So I'm going to share my screen here. Right. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this. As Sandy mentioned, as we're going along here, I'm going to kind of walk you through what we're hearing that are trends in the industry and ways that that you can work some of these initiatives into your strategy as well. Please feel free. I think Sandy's going to kind of manage the Q&A portion, but feel free to drop any questions you have into the Q&A tab or in the comment section. And if I don't see them, Sandy can stop me, or we can stop throughout, or we can kind of come back to that at some point towards the end of the presentation. So 2023 digital marketing, I'm sure, and I would love to, let me see if I can open the chat also. I'd love if you have a moment and are already working on your marketing plan. What do you feel like is going to be your priority this year? Are you already planning on social or what areas are you looking to focus? Feel free to drop some comments in the chat section so that I can reference at some point throughout this as well and make sure that this is relevant to you. So in 2023, I think one of the most important things we're hearing is this shift in digital in privacy laws and tracking of consumer behavior. as we go through some of that today, we're going to certainly talk about first-party data strategies, which speak specifically to privacy and kind of collecting your customer data so that you can be a smarter marketer. But the three kind of areas that we're going to focus on are content marketing, first-party data strategies, and then what is AI and how is artificial intelligence working into not only marketing in general, but specifically with advertising options that are out there as well. There are certainly more probably areas that are trending in general, but we have to kind of focus on something. So today I'm going to focus on what I feel are kind of the three most important as you're moving into 2023. So when we talk about content marketing, you've probably heard that before. It's not necessarily something that's new. People have and brands have been working with content strategies for many years now. I do think that it now is as important as it's ever been to really have this as a part of your strategy. As you see here, I reference SEM Rush. They report that content marketing is going to be the most predictable way to generate ROI. And I think the reason that they kind of speak to that is that your content marketing allows you to not only engage and grow an audience, but it also allows you to kind of build that trust factor, that authenticity, and gives you a way and means to communicate with your audience, but also to build up that kind of network of community within your audience as well. So you've probably thought about a content strategy. One thing that is important when you are considering your content strategy is really to have a plan in place if you can. And by having that, make it maybe a content calendar, for example, that's going to allow you not only to feel a little bit more prepared as you're moving into what that strategy is going to be, but then also give you some tangible measurement goals that you can really look back throughout the last year or 6 months or whenever you do your kind of reviews. If it's quarterly or annually, you can then have a map that led you throughout your year, your time frame there, and also allowed you to kind of see how you did based on what you planned out. So when we're talking about content, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, obviously, social media platforms is a great way to kind of push a lot of this content out. If you're thinking about social in 2023, there are a few trends that you may want to consider as well that I'll talk about within content. And that is specific to, obviously, everybody's probably heard of TikTok. I can appreciate the value that TikTok brings, but I think that it's easy also to have that shiny object syndrome and feel like you need to be on the next social media platform doing all the things. But I think something that is important to remember when you're considering these different social media platforms and your content strategy, what you're going to want to think about is, where are your customers? What are they spending their time doing? And how does that work into what your content strategy is going to be? How do you speak to them and not only educate them on what your product or your service or your offering is, but how does that break through the cycle of noise that they're seeing throughout all those other social media platforms? So making a plan using a content calendar can help with that, because you think about the strategy, you think about your ideal customer, you think about what they're thinking about and what they're doing on a day-to-day. That allows you to plan out how you want to work your messaging in across the different platforms. And then the third point with content calendars would be generating content from those users and from your audience members. So, make a point here that the best way to win over potential customers is using current customer testimonial. So that is also something to think about when you're planning out that content calendar. Not only do you have the ability to work in your messaging, but how do you use the voice of your customers and your audience members to further engage that community and really bring about that additional trust or additional value proposition of your product or service. So if we go on to the next, let's think about when you're planning that strategy or that calendar, think about it in terms of a funnel. The funnel concept doesn't have to focus strictly on content. It can be applied to the full brand marketing strategy in general. If you haven't heard of the funnel concept, just think about it in a sales world, or just visualize a funnel. You put things into the top and then they slowly work their way out to the bottom. The things that are in there at the bottom are the ones that come out. So your top of funnel is going to be that starting point of your buyer, your customer journey. Usually that content is going to be something that could be educational and value driven, but is not necessarily asking your potential customer to make a buying decision today. It's not telling them to make that. The call to action is going to be a little bit different. And maybe there isn't a call to action. It's just putting content out there that gets people to see your product, see your service, see your, what it is you're trying to communicate from your brand voice, and let them start to engage with that a little bit and see what that brand speaks to. As you drive those folks down that funnel, the second stage would be something that might have a little bit further educational component, but it could then also start to work in these call to action. So, on the top end, if you are traveling and promoting folks to come into your market for some type of an event, or for vacationing and exploring outdoors, for example, the top of funnel might just be a generic video. And when I say generic, I don't mean generic in the terms of simple or basic, but it can be a video that kind of highlights your brand or your mission or what it is your company's about. That middle of funnel can follow up with that and be a similar piece of content, but maybe it also works in a way, it works in, maybe if it's a video, for example, it could be a voiceover, it could have the text that pops up that says, have you started planning your trip for the spring of 2023? April's a great time to visit Southwest Virginia, for example. And then the bottom of funnel are going to be, those folks that have kind of come into that conversation, come into that, following your brand and engaging with your content. Bottom of funnel is not only going to still continue to build that trust, but it's actually going to be the point of acting or calling to action what that ask is going to be. Is it coming to visit? Is it buying this piece of product or this e-commerce sales point that we have? So funnels are very valuable in the sense of thinking about that life cycle of your customer journey. What type of messaging do you want to take them on as you work them into this different phase of the funnel? And then how are you going to build that build that value through education and that trust along the way before you ask them to make a purchasing decision? So let's go on to now talking about, well, before I jump into that, Leah, before I transition to artificial intelligence, because there are some interesting things with AI and the way that AI works into marketing, I'm going to stick with content here for a second. So I think one of the things that I keep reading about and hearing about for 2023 is, of course, the continued evolvement of video content. So I don't know what all of your brands are, what specifically, you all are kind of focusing on, but I think it's important to definitely consider video as an important piece of your strategy. But I also understand that depending on if you're a small business and depending on your resources, you may not always have the bandwidth or the time or the ability to do video on a regular basis. So there are some tools out there. If anybody has questions or wants specific resources for different types of video editing or kind of quickly creating videos, feel free to ping me. I'll drop my email at the end of this. But I want to speak to that because video is something that is important. As you know, TikTok is really all video. Instagram is becoming more and more video centric with Instagram stories versus the actual feed and reels. So when you're thinking about your funnel and your marketing, content marketing strategy, you definitely want to work in video if you can. Short educational videos are great. They don't need to be the exact same across TikTok, across Facebook as LinkedIn. Depending on what your offer is, you can have slight variations of those videos as well. But at the same time, I know that again takes more bandwidth. So I say all that to mainly just say that if you can find a way to work video in, that is something that's going to continue to evolve and be more and more, you're going to see it more. It's not going to go away. And we'll talk a little bit about other video opportunities a little bit later here. Okay, so let's move into speaking about the second or next phase that we talked about or going to talk about is artificial intelligence in the digital marketing space. So the old way of marketing and what we call like traditional media is still very present in marketing strategies. I am speaking more so to the digital side of things and how these digital tools can work into what is now kind of a quasi approach, not only traditional, but a little bit more new age. So when we're talking traditional, we're talking about television, old print ads, maybe billboards, for example, or radio. Those are still powerful tools for getting that brand message out. it's also something that you're going to see more of in a sense, but with new tools and new using AI as a means to basically make smarter decisions and allow the software to make smarter decisions for your brand or on your behalf. So when we're talking about artificial intelligence, if you think about the old school, television ads or billboard ads or even radio, you didn't really know who your audience. I mean, you knew who your audience was based on the programming. You could have a pretty good guess, but you weren't really capturing any data. People would see a video or a commercial on their television, but they're unless they go to your website, you're not capturing that data. And we'll talk about data a little bit more in a moment too. But the great thing with artificial intelligence is it's allowing us to build, and I'm not building anything. It's not saying allowing us, but it's allowing us to use tools that have been built for basically managing certain aspects of your marketing strategy with algorithms, with auto optimization. It's basically using data that takes out some of our emotional kind of decision making and basically uses the data based on what people are doing and what you're searching for and what engagements you're taking. So while it could feel a little Big Brother-esque in many ways as a consumer, I of course am a little hesitant to want to share my information or have people tracking me. But on the flip side of that, as a consumer, I'd rather see advertising, I'd rather see content, and I'd rather see brands that are going to speak to what I'm interested in. So this is something that artificial intelligence is really bringing to the forefront when you're thinking about marketing. As you see here, predictive analytics based on data it's collecting that we're giving it, maybe not necessarily feeding directly, but based on decisions that we're making. It's enabling the software to better serve us more content that's going to speak to what our interests are. So how do you use that in your marketing strategy? There are some tools we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but Sandy mentioned I work for a platform called Found.ee. It's a digital marketing platform that I can talk a little bit more towards the end of the presentation. But our platform is built off of taking this data, learning from it, and allowing you to use some of those tools to then better market and make better decisions. And that's where you should be considering what your data plan is and how can you use some of these different artificial intelligence tools to help you make better decisions along the way. So when we're talking about tools that you could actually use in your day-to-day, some of these you may already be using. I would venture to guess you all probably have an email list to some capacity, marketing and speaking directly to those avid customers. That's going to be very, very valuable. Let's see. I thought I saw a question, so I was going to stop, but it looks like we're good.
No, for some reason, the chat is not working feature, and it worked fine last night, and I hadn't changed anything. So folks were letting me know that it wasn't working, and I apologize. I'll try to log in on another device and make a change, but I don't know if it works. Sorry. Please
That's
continue.
All right. I do see a couple comments. So yeah, if anybody can get through and has questions, feel free to drop them in and we'll try and figure it out. So going back to talking about some of the tools that you may already be doing. So if you're using social media, the algorithms, all of that stuff is built off of artificial intelligence, which in some ways we could say as brands and as folks trying to market our business, the algorithms aren't always working in our favor. That's generally because, the way the platforms are built is, it's definitely not necessarily to be against you, but a lot of these platforms, the way they monetize their business income comes from advertising. So there are ways that advertising can allow those educational and data pieces to be able to work into not only your organic strategy, but then also a paid strategy. So you're likely already using tools that are built off of AI. These are just a few. Chatbots are becoming more and more present as well in our space. And I think that's because as consumers, we've grown to almost want immediate answers. Our attention spans are probably dwindling a little bit. So if you can deploy some type of chatbot on your website so that when customers get there, there's a kind of a sequence of responses based on maybe first engagements that they do. Those are really powerful tools. It allows you to start to build that relationship and that trust right on those sites, whether it's website, whether it's on Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger. Again, we talked about email marketing. when you're thinking about that content strategy, you think about the funnel steps. I didn't mention this, but something to consider is, and we'll talk a little bit more about first party data and the importance of it, but email, if you can capture somebody's email, that's going to be your most reliable communication tool. I don't have the stat on me, but I read recently that, the percentage or odds of somebody opening an email you send them are quite drastically more. And I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was like 60% or 64% more. They're more likely to open that email that you send them because they've opted into an email from you than they are to necessarily stop and read that post that's in a flood of other information coming in a social media feed. So if you can capture emails, that's going to be a great way to continue to communicate, personalize that communication, in turn start to ask for certain call to actions, and then we'll eventually drive higher conversion rates. Advertising, I mentioned it briefly, and we'll talk a little bit more about advertising here in a few minutes, but artificial intelligence is making advertising digitally anyways a much more easier route in terms of allowing the platforms to learn, auto optimize based on data that it's pulling from your customers, from your prospects, and things that they're doing. So these are tools and ways that you may want to consider diving a little bit deeper on working them into your future strategies. All right, I'll move some stuff around here. So let me get back to okay, here we go. So we're talking about data, and artificial intelligence is built off of data. So I'm kind of mixing in some of my Found.ee resources with just general marketing. And, Found.ee is a platform that's built off of audience data, capturing data, first party data, which in turn allows you again to be a smarter and a little bit more strategic marketer, and then also to drive more innovation and revenue. So as you collect data, you're able to learn from that data. The artificial intelligence in these backend platforms start to learn from that data and then provide you maybe key performance metrics or key trends that are moving in a certain direction based on engagements that are happening from your from your many different channels. So data is something that if you haven't already started to invest in a data strategy or data plan, I would highly, highly recommend it. You've likely heard, if you've done any digital marketing kind of in the recent years, we're moving into an industry or a timing within the industry where digital privacy is becoming more and more important. Of course, it's easy to argue that it should have and should always be important, but now it's becoming even more important because we're starting to see new laws that are being introduced that are basically deprecating old third-party cookie tracking, third-party tracking, and third-party data, which is essentially data that you can market to from somebody else that's basically mined that data. If you start to consider for yourself what your future should be focused on, I would argue first-party data is where you really want to focus your energy. And that may be a new term for some of you. It may not be for others, but first-party data is essentially data that's collected directly from your customers. Many ways you can get that, by placing pixels on your website. If you're not familiar with a pixel is essentially a piece of HTML code, that gets placed on the back end of your website or your different pages or apps. And when somebody comes to your website, that pixel fires, which then basically pulls them into your audience. And then if I visit your website and I click on certain buttons with that pixel, there are many different things that you can start to see and analyze that your customers are doing once they hit their website. The other thing it allows you to do is see things that they're not doing. So you can start to see with Google Analytics, you may have already been familiar with, you may have that on your website. Google is moving into a new phase where GA4 is going to be the new analytics tool. It's not vastly different, but it is something that is going to take a little bit of a learning curve for a lot of people because measuring things is a little bit different than it's been before in analytics. So if most of you, if you're small business owners, are focused on specific roles within like building your brand, building your your brand loyalty, you might not be as worried about the data and analyzing it on the back end, but there are companies, there are resources out there that can relatively easily make that something that's at least worked into your strategy, and you get it set up once and then it's always there. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, work with your web teams, talk to whoever is handling your website, and see if they have any knowledge to pixels and tracking, and have them place certain pixels on your site. There are some things you need to do and make sure that you let people know and allow people to opt in or opt out of that tracking, of course. So those are things that your webmaster or your web builder should also know as well. So going back to first party data, it's really important. Of course, just because I've been on your website doesn't necessarily mean that that I've signed up for any emails or bought any products from you yet, but it allows you to then start to remarket to me. So say I've just learned about your brand, I either engage with a social media post, or maybe I click over to that website. Now that I've become into that top of funnel, you can start to work on content that will then allow you to stay engaged with me as that potential customer. And then eventually I sign up for an email, or maybe I opt into a certain thing that allows you to communicate directly with me as well. And that's going back to the emails. SMS texting is a big thing that we're moving into as well. Apps for brands is something that is also I'm seeing a lot more interest in. And what building your own app allows people to do is to be more engaged. So it might feel like an undertaking to build out an app. There are many tools out there that can kind of do that for you quickly based off of your existing website content. But what studies have shown is that essentially if you have your own app, you're going to get more brand loyalty, in the sense that people that download that app are oftentimes more likely to engage with your content on a regular basis, and also more likely to make a purchase because they have that direct access point. So, depending on your business model, it may not make sense for you to build out an app, but apps are also something that I'm seeing folks look into because it gives them that first party data. When we talk about first party,
Taylor,
yes, ma'am.
Jay Marshall's asking, what do you think of combining SEO and PPC to maximize your results?
Yeah, great question. We're going to talk a little bit about advertising in a minute. So I can speak a little bit more. Sandy, I may ask you just to remind me that exact question here in a few minutes.
Will do.
So yeah, thanks for that, Jay. But I'll definitely dig into advertising here in just a few. So first party data is important. Think about ways you can do it, whether it's signing up for text messaging, signing up for emails, just getting people to your website. Another thing that enables you, if you build out a big first party data pool. So let's say you've had, 1 million people come through your audience in the last 12 months, right? There are ways that you can also monetize data now. So if you have another major brand that maybe is going to sponsor an upcoming concert series or an event that your city or county or your team is producing, you could then sell a sponsorship to not only have brand assets for that sponsor on site at that event, but then you could also say, we also have an audience online that you can market directly to with some type of co-branded messaging. And then Found.ee, for example, has tools to where you could allow that third party brand, say a Best Buy sponsoring your event, they could run an ad targeting your customers through the cookies, through audience that you've built up on your website. And then you also could recoup some revenue off of that ad spend. So there's some really cool things with monetization too. All right, let's move along. Why do you need it? I talked a little bit about it. It allows you to learn from your own audience. It allows you to start to market and retarget with advertising or organic content based on what you've learned about your audience. And then, according to Think with Google, brands using first-party data and key marketing functions achieved, almost 3 times revenue lift and a 1.5 increase in cost savings. So, again, really important, especially as we move into the kind of future world of privacy tracking. So how do you collect it? I mentioned pixels, capture modals, surveys and contests. Getting people to answer questions in a survey is another great way to capture that data. Okay, so Jay, you had some questions about advertising. I'll go ahead and answer that. I think, it's tough because we don't all have a limitless budget when we're talking about advertising. It would be amazing if we did, and that would make life a lot easier, because I think it is important to spread that marketing mix out. I think in many different industries, I know specifically in the music industry, venues and festivals and A lot of my clients have relied solely on social media for many years. Of course, they've had an email list, but from a standpoint of advertising, they've focused really heavily on social. And we're starting to see costs rise on social advertising. We're starting to see a lot of people jump ship from certain social platforms, whether it be just because they don't want to be on there or they're just looking for less time on the internet. So I think there is value in spreading that mix out. I think search, search advertising and search campaigns through Google is very important. It can be, it doesn't have to be. It depends on what what you're going up against to some degree and what your brand offering is. Sandy, will you read that question to me one more time? So, you said search and paid cost per click. Is that accurate?
I've got to get my hand back, get it back on. It is what do you think of combining SEO and PPC to maximize your results?
Okay, got it. Thanks. Absolutely, Jay. I think you should do that. I think, if you can, what I have many clients that do will come to me and what we'll look at is they'll say, while I don't really focus on social advertising or even search campaigns anymore, I'm not telling clients that they shouldn't be doing them. Generally, what happens is they're going to be executing search campaigns, they're going to be executing social campaigns, and then they'll carve out a budget for what we focus on, which is programmatic advertising. And programmatic is a little bit it's been around for a bit, but it's also relatively new when it comes to digital ads. If you're using Google Ads, there's a certain component of programmatic that's happening there because, again, once the algorithms learn, it's going to auto optimize and find the best way to spend those ad dollars. So I definitely think search is valuable. I think as we move into kind of a new age where I think the content is super important to what your messaging is. When people are searching for something and you're running a search campaign, that's like the lowest hanging fruit. So typically that's going to be your cheapest cost. Depending on your industry, you might see that cost, it depends on the competition, right? So basically what happens when you start to execute ads is you're bidding on certain placements. And if you're doing a search campaign, you're bidding against other brands that might be also bidding for that same keyword search. So it depends a little bit on your industry and your target market and geo and many different factors, really. But if you can spread that budget out to include search, to include display programmatic advertising, which is similar, Jay, probably what you're referencing when you're talking about CPC, display banners. And then social media is great. In my mind, social is a great tool for kind of remarketing and keeping that conversation going with your customer or potential customer. So when we go back to thinking about the funnel, programmatic advertising is a great tool for top of funnel, reaching new people across websites based on things that they're looking for or searching and actions that they're taking. So a little bit different than search engine marketing. Programmatic is going to be using display banners, video ads, audio ads, connected TV is even programmatic nowadays. As you see here, you've probably read this already, but basically it's machine learning. So it's going to make that advertising a little bit smarter. As we talked about, social is important. Having, a way that I implement for myself, and this is for music, but it's very similar to kind of that funnel concept. I always have some social ads running that are basically taking a different piece of content that I've posted within the last week or 2 weeks that did well organically, and then boosting that to make sure the other percentage of my followers that don't see my content every day, so that they're also seeing it, right? So if you have 10,000 followers on Instagram, you post a reel or just a story or whatever. Usually you might see between anywhere. I mean, it depends on how engaging that content is, but usually it's like a 10 to 15% engagement rate based on the amount of followers. If you have 10,000 followers, you might see, 150 likes. You might see 1,500 likes. Again, it just depends a little, but using social ads could be a great way to make sure that they're seeing the posts that you want them to see. Programmatic is a way to reach people outside of those social networks. So Jay, when you're talking about like CPC advertising, display banners, driving the attempt to drive traffic and maximize clicks, programmatic is a great way to do that. Found.ee, for example, allows folks to create campaigns that target specific domains versus specific audiences. So when Machine learning and real-time bidding is basically taking your targeting. So if you're targeting people that are in the outdoor activities, like to fish, like to hike or canoe or kayak, you're going to target people that fall within these contextual based and interest based audiences. That data comes from actions that they've taken across the web. So if you're using a programmatic platform to deliver your ad and it's a display banners targeting that audience set, what a lot of the programmatic platforms allow you to do is to essentially bid in real time across multiple different ad exchanges, which then allow you to get a cheaper cost than if you went directly to, say, outdoormagazine.com and said, I want to buy ads on your platform. So using the AI, the machine learning, all of those details are going to make you be a smarter marketer, because you're not going to have to overly think about it. You're going to allow the platform to do that work for you. I mentioned here CTV. That's a brand. I shouldn't say brand new. It's been around now for a couple of years, but you're going to see more and more people running ads, and more small businesses have the ability to run an ad on somebody's TV in somebody's living room as they're watching the nightly news or as they're watching ESPN and watching sports, because of programmatic advertising. It allows us smaller folks as a brand. We don't have to be the Toyotas of the world. We don't have to have 25 grand to go run a TV campaign anymore. Okay. So talking about that and transitioning a little bit more into TV and video advertising, this is a new model or new way of doing what I call traditional marketing, traditional media, which is that brand awareness of putting videos in front of people in their living rooms. If you see that number increasing, that is, think about when you're watching your favorite show at night. That's probably when you're most engaged. Yes, you could get up and go to the restroom or go to the kitchen to get a snack or something, but generally you can't skip those commercials. It's not like an ad that you see in a Facebook stream or Instagram or on TikTok even, that you can just quickly scroll past. These are highly, highly engaging 15 to 30-second videos that people have to let play through. Otherwise, they can't stop it. They could change the channel, but in order to see that programming, they're going to have to watch it. So these are great tools. Found.ee has the ability, allows self-serve advertising for you to go in, upload a 15-second video and run it in people's living rooms, targeting people watching Disney or, sports on Hulu, for example. So this is something I would recommend everybody considering. You do need some good video content. So again, it's something you might have to make a little bit of investment in, but, think also, if you are going this route, people aren't necessarily clicking a link to go over to your website. So think about what the call to action is going to be. I tell many of these labels, they're marketing music. So they're saying, tell your smart speaker to go play this track. For you all, if you're marketing a business, a service in a specific market, say in Abingdon, it could be go to the website and enter code I love Abington or Virginia's for lovers to get 10% off of that offering. So it's a new way it's a new old way to reach people, and it's really effective. So talking about display banners, this is an example. I'm using this for my actual music focus, but we allow our users are able to basically go in and set up their own self-serve display campaign targeting these premium websites. So if I went directly to a Rolling Stone or New York Times or NPR, or any of these like major media outlets, they're going to have a varying degree of minimum spend. And they're typically they're measuring the cost off of a CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. So this again is talking a little bit more in traditional terms, because a lot of folks now think about it's all about cost per click. Well, I think you need to kind of shift. If you're focused on cost per click, you have to think about it in a bigger picture now, instead of this vacuum of just driving traffic because of competition. So this is kind of trying to take everything we've talked about and pull it into a synopsis strategy. So if you think about that content, it needs to be valuable. It needs to be educational to a degree. It needs to speak to the audience that you want to, or you feel is going to be your target demographic, right? And as you move them down that funnel, you might use advertising to continue that message. Well, when you're talking top of funnel, if you could run an ad and get it on, I'm in Charlotte, so I could run ads on Charlotte Observer without having to go directly to the Charlotte Observer team, talk to an ad person and get a quote for, say, a minimum of a 5K spend, and their CPMs are $15. So through programs like Found.ee, you can run advertising like that with no minimum spends, and our CPMs average less than $5. So instead of spending $15 for every 1,000 views or impressions of that ad, you could spend $5 for 1,000 of those. So you can see that using programmatic advertising will allow you to not only be a smarter advertiser because you're using that machine learning, but it also decreases cost and increases the efficacy of that as well. In addition to domain targeting, you also have the ability, as I mentioned earlier, contextual audiences. So I'm referencing, ticket buyers, people buying tickets online, festival enthusiasts, concert goers. This could translate to your industry to be, I mentioned earlier, like outdoors. We have a buku of list of contextual based audiences for many different things. We also have buying habits, right? So if we have audiences that are people likely that are buying Ford vehicles, for example. So think about what that customer avatar, that ideal target demographic is. What do they do? What are they listening to? What are they watching? Where are they consuming media? And what type of purchases are they making? And then use that in your targeting for display advertising. And you'll see that it's a great way to fill that top of funnel. And then once you get them in that funnel, you're able to then start to message them based on different call to actions. If they're signing up for an email, use social media, or get them to sign up for a text campaign. So this is a good way to reach people and drive traffic over to a new website. Your website, or a landing page, or wherever that new content is. So I'm sorry, I'm pulling the wrong thing up there. So that is kind of a quick, I'm in conclusion here. So I want to, I went through everything kind of quickly, so I want to leave enough time for any questions and digging in a little bit deeper. I mentioned this earlier to Sandy, but I tell folks oftentimes there are so many different rabbit holes you can go down when you're talking about digital marketing in general, let alone digital marketing. So I think, an important thing that I always mention after something like this is to not feel like you have to do everything, but try to pick and choose some of these different initiatives that speak to you, but also speak to what you feel like can work into your strategies, right? So you don't have to be everywhere all the time, but if you can spread some of that stuff out, it's going to obviously reach a broader audience and also give you ways to kind of communicate across different platforms and in different mediums of content. Sandy, do we have any other questions or anything you want me to dig in a little bit further on?
We sure do. Hannah wants to know, some of us operate businesses by ourselves or one other employee. What are your top marketing priorities for extremely small businesses with limited resources? And we all have limited.
Yes, great question. I think in my mind, if you're a small business, then and even if you're not, but if you're a 1 or 2 person team, then generally your face is going to be the face of that brand, right? So it's easy to be so caught up in the business sometimes to feel like you have to be perfect with making a video, or like, I don't have time to create a high quality video or whatever. I totally understand and get that. But I think where you can excel is use your voice as that brand and put yourself out there a little bit and be authentic in it, and show people what you're doing on a day-to-day. If social media, for example, if social media is a strategy that you're kind of trying to build your audience off of, then use that fact that it is just you and maybe one other person, and build that brand off of that a little bit, so that people can see that they're not buying from you or a specific brand. I'm sorry, they're not buying from like some brand they don't know. They're buying from you and who you are as a leader of that brand and as a leader of that business. So again, I would say use yourself to be authentic and kind of message that if you're willing to put yourself out there visually on a video. But then the other thing I would say is find a few areas of focus. Don't feel like you have to be on all the social media platforms. If you know that your customer demographic is a certain age range and tends to kind of be into certain things, then go, lean towards the platform that speaks to you as what type of content you would like to put out there, and focus on that.
Kind of on that same line of discussion, I watch a lot of YouTube, just because I do have cable, but there's just not a lot on there sometimes that I want. But, I'm noticing on a lot of blogs, people that are posting, it could be somebody that does gardening or just various things, that they do a paid advertising right in the middle of their segment, that someone's given them a free sample or a product and I'm sure they gave them some money to do that. Do you think that would be beneficial, considering too that we have a number of folks that are in the tourism business here in Southwest Virginia? If they found someone right locally that has a vlog that has, 30,000 or 100,000 viewers or what have you, would that be something that's different and be very targeted to the audience that they're going after?
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand. So that person that's doing the video or blog, they're actually doing the ad. It's not just another ad that pops up in there.
Yeah, they're stopping during their video recording, and they are, and I'm seeing this more and more. They're holding up a product or talking about it, and or they've done the little video ad beforehand, and they just plug it into their video when they're editing. But it's very, you can't. I'm always waiting for, that I can move on, that I can slip off of that. But, on this, you can't.
You can't skip it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you have that relationship with somebody, and somebody that's big in your market, then that is a good way. I mean, that it makes me think about podcast advertising. So, you're gonna, as somebody that's trying to get them to market your brand, it's coming from that personality, we'll say, right? So the people that are tuning into that podcaster's episode or the video on YouTube, they're probably pretty, they're loyal follower of that personality. So it's going to have an authenticity to it when they actually, speak to your product or your service or come visit this area. I think the challenge with that, I think it's a great way if you have the resources. If you have somebody that has a big enough audience, they're probably going to charge a little bit more. And so the only other side I would say to that is thinking about the budget. You could probably reach a wider audience for less using connected television, for example, and target, people watching HGTV or people watching the Travel Channel, people, or people that are on travel websites that are planning trips, because when you're running advertising, you can always, hone in on that geographic area. So, Sandy, I don't think it's a bad idea by any means if you have somebody that you have a connection with and can have that conversation with. But for a little bit more efficient and faster way to get the word out, I think you should also consider ads, because you don't have to rely on that third party person, and maybe they may charge more than you have budgeted.
And Jay Marshall shared that sounds like you're talking about using an influencer for marketing your product and services. Yes, that's exactly what they do. And again, if they have a couple 100,000 that watch that video, that is a pretty good way to be very targeted in your marketing. If anyone else has a question, please post those in the Q&A. I have one more. When you were talking about email marketing, do you think that in some cases you can get a greater impact if that email looks like it's a personal email coming from you versus it coming from, MailChimp or some of the other services?
Yeah, definitely. And there are ways, even with the MailChimp, that you can set it up so that it doesn't feel like a newsletter. It feels like a direct one-to-one email. And there are some other AI tools out there. I didn't, I guess I can stop sharing my screen. Oh, let me go to the next one. If you want to email me and dig into anything further, and Sandy will send out this too, but you can email me and I'm happy to kind of, have one-on-one conversations or kind of, take a call and chat about that. But for now, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can chat. So yeah, Sandy, I think that, that's a tough thing. So remind me where I've just lost my train of thought onto what you were asking though.
Do you think in some cases that you could get a greater impact if the person that you're emailing feels like it's more of a personal email coming from you versus coming from a MailChimp or constant contact.
Yeah, and some of the stuff we didn't go into with AI, you probably all heard of the buzz around like Chat GPT and whatever it's called, so there are more and more tools that are coming that will help you personalize emails, that'll also give you some of your time back. So to answer your question, I absolutely do. I think the challenge with that sometimes is figuring out how to personalize it. How direct of a relationship do you have with that customer? Do you really know things about them? When I'm working B2B, a lot of times it's I know my client. So you know, I can kind of throw in a jab about a football game or something, if I know that their team got beat by my team or something. So I think personalization is always going to be better than generalization when it comes to direct conversations, in which email is meant to be. But there's a time and place for it. So it really depends on what that offering is, and finding ways, I think, to speak to them, that's going to create that more personalization in a brand and give them more trust in you as a brand.
Great. Joshua Ketron asks, when creating content, whether it be a blog or vlog for my website, what is the best resource to make sure that I am using the best keywords for the ever-changing analytics? Also, in my industry, there is not a lot of open APIs, so is Zapier the best tool to get data from my app to my CRM?
Yeah, so to start with, that's a really, I think, a tough thing to some degree with thinking about keywords or hashtags and all of that, because it is ever evolving. There are some sites out there that I found that sometimes have like trending hashtags or trending topics. So, even if you use Twitter, for example, you could just kind of go in there quickly and probably do a search within your industry and see what is trending and what type of hashtags are being used. I've typically kind of I'll create a list of them. And if I'm putting a YouTube video up, to make it really quick and easy, you then highlight all, copy and paste those into that description. Another thing to think about is what content are you putting into that description of that YouTube video or blog? That is, what links are you using? So you want to drive traffic, whether it's over to your website or maybe over to other social channels. So you could then use use a trackable link, like with Found.ee, for example. We have trackable links. So even if you're sending traffic from a YouTube page over to Instagram, if they click that Found.ee link that redirects over to Instagram, it fires those pixels that pull them into that audience. So then you could continue to run advertising to them if you wanted to after the fact. But yeah, I think, and what was the second part of that question? Best tools to get data. Yes, Zapier. I mean, we use it all the time to tie different tools together. I'm not exactly sure, where you're driving traffic to. If it looks like from your app to your CRM. Depends on the CRM too, I think, but Zapier is probably the best resource for connecting various different pieces of digital tools that I've seen out there. But also depending on, again, like using a trackable Found.ee as a trackable link, you could also use that to drive traffic depending on where you're sending people, and kind of capture that data within that in our data management platform as well. And I'll mention Found.ee is a free tool to use. So if anybody wants to check it out, it is branded and geared towards the music industry, but I have lawyers and real estate agents in many different industries using some of the tools just because it is free to use. So
great. We have 5 minutes. Do you want to bring up the Found.ee website and show some of the benefits?
Yeah, let me find it. Let me get into, here we go. Okay. It's going to, and I can always send more of this info around. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm getting into there. Okay. All right. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is the dashboard. This is where you would land when you log in. This is our customer service account. So as you can see, it is geared towards music, but where some of the other industries are using it is, instead, thinking of total fans could just be total audience. So
now, Taylor, I think this is showing more your email, and because it has your presentation up.
Okay, let me see. I must have clicked the wrong one. Let's see here.
But I didn't see that you won the lottery, so I wasn't going to
Oh,
steal your
dang.
number. Okay, there you go.
Okay, you got it now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the dashboard where you would land when you log in. You can see Apple Music, Spotify fans. This is again geared towards music, but total fans would just be your total audience. We automatically segment some data for our music focused audiences, because if people come to one of the pages that we've created, if people click on a certain button, if they click on Spotify versus Apple, it lumps them into a Spotify audience so that you could remarket to them with a very specific message and driving traffic to a specific location. So the main areas that folks use us is for links. So I mentioned the trackable short links. You could come in here, click shorten, paste whatever URL it is. It could be a YouTube video, it could be your website, it could be Instagram, and then shorten it to a Found.ee link, and then use that link just like a bit.ly, right? Or something like that you're going to use to send traffic to other places. That's one way. And then the other is our advertising. So under advertising campaigns, I mentioned connected TV. We do have video advertising. You can see here that, you could advertise on channels like ESPN, Discovery, HGTV. And then the web and mobile these are the two kind of main areas of focus for people. If you come in here, if you've ever built, I think Jay was asking about, Google ads. The process for creating advertising campaigns in our platform is really easy and efficient. And I mentioned, you just come in here and basically plug in this, everything's on one page. Our premium advertising. So if, for example, you wanted to target people that are traveling, let's see, I think we have a travel. So we have travel and adventure. So I can click manage and actually see these websites that you're reaching people on. But let's say that, in addition to this, because you're in Southwest Virginia, you also want to be on, I can't remember if this is right, but let's say heraldcourier.com. I'm just making stuff up, but you can add different sites in here. Citizen Times, which is Asheville's magazine, newspaper. You can add those in and then create a custom list, and again, reach people on premium outdoor websites or premium news outlets without having to go direct and spend a minimum amount. Discard changes. And then in addition to the domain targeting, we also have interests. So you can see all the different interests. You mentioned, let's see, travel, people that travel via airlines, people renting cars, hotels, all types of travel targeting here. This is going to be reaching people across all of display networks, wherever they are, if the display ad is allowed, but because they fall within one of these categories of interest. And then there's some reporting and audience tools as well. If you look at remarketing audiences, again, we have the ability to create lookalike audiences. You can segment people that have been to your website but haven't made a purchase, or people that have been to your website but haven't been on this specific page. So it really allows you to understand what people are doing and where they are going and interacting with your site. And then you could always run a paid advertising based on that decision.
Jay Marshall said, this sounds great. I might have to sign up and give it a try. Thanks. And then Josh Taylor said, you can also make a short link consistent with your website URL easily through the back end of your website, like WordPress, through settings, 301 redirects.
Yeah, you could do that. That's a bit more tedious going through WordPress, I think. You could do that here, and you could also, we do have, for our paid version, which is $5 a month, you have custom domains. So I'll show you an example.
And while you're looking, Charlene wants to know, do you see pushback from the websites you're targeting because you aren't paying or you aren't purchasing ads from them?
No, because they still get they monetize that. So they opt into allowing basically those additional impressions that they don't, even like the Rolling Stones of the world that are selling ad placements directly, they get so many impressions in a day that more times than not, they're not selling ad space for every impression that's there. So they opt in to allow those third-party placements, which is how our platform is able to get those. So they're still monetizing that and getting paid for that as well. Basically, the way our platform works, we bid across 24 different ad exchanges, many of which have access to these premium outlets. But because we're bidding across those 24 different exchanges, we're able to get the cheapest cost to find that cheapest entry point. And there are some tools that, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, where you could bid higher to get more impressions, cost a little bit more, your CPM would go up, but it enables you to get more, ensure more placements on specific sites if you want to. But yeah, to any of your folks, Sandy, Josh, Jay, whoever it was that mentioned, I'd be more than happy to kind of give you a more thorough walkthrough of Found.ee and kind of talk about your use case and where ads could be beneficial, or, where any of our tools might make sense. What I was going to point out is this is a Found.ee link and a Found.ee page, but with you're able to use a subdomain of your actual website instead of a Found.ee link. So there's still a Found.ee page, but this is with if you look under, account settings, we have a $5 a month that basically gives you vanity short links, which allow you to use that custom URL that you could create as many of those links as you want. So you could point traffic wherever you want. You don't have to jump in the back of WordPress to do that. So this would be a really quick and easy way to do it.
Well, Taylor, I don't see any other questions, but I can't thank you enough. My head's swollen a little bit, and I don't have as much hair as I used to, but I want to thank you. I know that it takes a lot of time to put these together, and I certainly learned a lot, and I hope everyone that watched today is leaving after this with learning a number of new things. And I will be posting this video up on the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubators Facebook page, but we also have a YouTube channel called New Knowledge that we have probably close to 190 webinars that we've done over the past 10 years there that you can go to, and we'll certainly be posting this from Taylor. And if anyone, wait, we got some last minute ones. Oh, just thank you. Very informative and great work. But again, thanks so much for doing this. And I want to put a plug in for those that do not have our list, but I want to share with you what our next New Knowledge session will be in 2 weeks on February the 1st. It will focus on the importance of public speaking. So we're continuing on the marketing theme. And if you're not involved in your chambers and other outreach initiatives, hopefully this will help you. And Sonia Van Hook with Wolfhill's Toastmasters will be leading this session. Again, thanks so much. And we do this for you all. And I hope that you benefited. And we couldn't do it without folks like Taylor Winchester. And if my friend Kim Davis is still on here, thank you so much for putting me together with Taylor and to do this. But have a great day, everyone, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Sandy, for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.